The Mafia boss's Christmas obsession, he claims a homeless maid, who becomes the only power he can't control. Dwayne Tinsley stood still in the hotel basement, the low roar of dryers filling the air. Steam rose as a woman scrubbed clothes in a utility sink that was not hers to use. His security team waited behind him, ready. One signal, and she would be removed. Dwayne was 6'3", built like a wall, tattoos lining his forearms beneath rolled sleeves. His tailored suit looked out of place in the damp room. His dark hair was perfect. His eyes were cold, trained to measure risk and control. The woman turned. Peggy Edgerton, 28. Wet hair clung to her face. Donated clothes hung loose on her body. She looked tired, yet her eyes stayed sharp, refusing shame. She stiffened, expecting orders. Dwayne studied her, the power gap clear in every breath. "You need work," he said. "I need someone to manage my private residence. Housing included. You start tonight." Her jaw set. "I don't need charity." "Good," Dwayne replied. "I don't give it." In that basement, beneath his luxury hotel, a man who owned cities met the one woman who would test every rule he lived by. Stay with this story. Subscribe to see what this choice costs them both. Thank you, truly, thank you for spending these moments with me. Every time you watch, every time you listen, every time you allow these characters to touch your heart, you give life to this channel. Your support is the reason these stories continue to breathe. We're on a journey together, one built on love, heartbreak, healing, and resilience. And now, we're reaching for a new milestone, 10,000 subscribers. It's a big dream, but it's a dream we can reach together. If you've been enjoying these stories, if you've ever felt seen, moved, comforted, or inspired by them, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's a message that these stories matter, that this little storytelling family is growing, and that we're building something beautiful here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. And thank you for being part of this journey. Let's reach 10,000, side by side. Christmas wrapped Chicago in light and noise. Michigan Avenue glowed with white strings draped over steel and glass. Store windows promised warmth, success, and perfect endings. The magnificent mile moved with calm confidence, money flowing as easily as traffic. Just a few blocks away, under the Chicago Transit Authority Red Line tracks, people pressed close for heat, sharing thin blankets and paper cups. The city celebrated while others waited for morning. Dwayne Tinsley watched it all from his penthouse above Navy Pier. 34 years old, built from control and precision, he owned the view and most things beneath it. His empire stretched from old warehouses along the Chicago River to high-end clubs in River North. He learned early that power was taken, never offered. His father worked the docks in Bridgeport, hands ruined, pride stripped by wages that never stretched far enough. Dwayne watched poverty break a good man. He decided that would never be him. Peggy Edgerton once believed effort was enough. She earned a teaching degree from Roosevelt University and took a sixth-grade position on the South Side. She loved the work. She stayed late, paid for supplies, believed consistency could change lives. Then her brother needed help. Addiction pulled him under, and she chased him with rent money, credit cards, and hope. When he disappeared, the debts stayed. The apartment in Logan Square went first. The job followed. 3 months passed in shelters, libraries, and 24-hour stores. She learned how fast people stop seeing you. December 18th cut sharp with cold. Peggy slipped into the Apex Hotel, blending with staff preparing for a Christmas charity gala. She planned to warm up, wash clothes, and leave before anyone noticed. The basement smelled of soap and heat. She worked fast, aware of risk, tired of fear deciding everything. Dwayne came down for a surprise inspection. He noticed her immediately. Not the clothes or the place she did not belong, but the way she stood her ground without apology. She met his stare. When security waited for orders, she braced herself and did not beg. He asked questions. She answered clearly. She refused to explain her existence. That refusal caught him off guard. He saw intelligence under exhaustion, discipline under loss. He made an offer without calculation, without review. Work. Housing. Tonight. It broke his rules. He did not understand why he spoke before thinking, only that he did. She followed him upstairs in silence, shock held tight. The penthouse doors opened to heat and space. Marble floors warmed her feet. The bedroom suite was larger than her lost apartment. Windows framed the lake and city lights. It felt unreal, like walking into someone else's life. Dwayne laid out rules. Discretion. Privacy. No questions about his work. She would manage the residence only. Nothing else. Peggy listened and agreed. She asked for nothing more. When he left her alone, she sat on the edge of the bed and breathed until the room stopped spinning. The first days passed carefully. 3 days of distance. Dwayne worked 18 hours at a stretch. Instructions were brief. Peggy cleaned rooms that already shone. She stocked shelves, organized closets, and learned the quiet rhythms of the space. She cooked simple meals that often went untouched. Small things changed without notice. Coffee waited at the right time. Real food replaced boxes. Flowers appeared, fresh but modest. Books shifted into order. Chairs angled toward each other instead of facing screens. The penthouse began to feel used, not displayed. Dwayne noticed more than he wanted to admit. He listened for her steps. He found reasons to leave his office. The silence felt different now, fuller. He told himself it meant nothing. On December 22nd, he came home early from dangerous business. Snow drifted along the Chicago River, ice floating slow beneath the bridges lit for Christmas. He poured bourbon and stood at the windows, shoulders tight. Peggy finished cleaning and paused nearby. For the first time, they talked without purpose. "Do you believe in second chances?" he asked. She answered honestly. "I believe in taking them when they show up." He stared out at the water. Connection is a risk. Loneliness is safer. She studied him. Safe sounds empty. He warned her that people unafraid of him did not last. She told him her real fears. Losing this chance. Becoming unseen again. You matter, he said, surprising himself. He felt the weight of that truth settle in his chest. That was the danger. Snow fell heavy on Christmas Eve, cancelling meetings and closing roads. The city slowed. They were alone together. Peggy cooked while Dwayne pretended to work, watching her move through the kitchen with ease. Normal life felt strange to him. She told him about her brother, about loving someone who would not be saved. About teaching kids who tried every day. He listened without interrupting. He saw strength built from experience, not theory. I've done terrible things, he said. People obey me because they are afraid. Then choose better, she replied. You already did once. They ate together at the dining table for the first time, snow turning the city white. He gave her a silver necklace with a small key. She gave him a first edition book chosen only for joy. They talked until morning. He told her about Bridgeport, about believing nothing could be taken if you guarded it hard enough. She told him her mother cleaned houses to buy books, because knowledge felt safe. They took everything else, he said. But not who you are. On the sofa, they sat closer. He realized she wanted nothing from him except honesty. That changed everything. The first 3 days passed with care on both sides. Dwayne spoke only when necessary. Instructions were short and direct. Peggy followed them without comment. She cleaned rooms that already looked untouched, wiped counters that held no dust, and folded towels that had never been used. She prepared meals during gaps in his schedule, careful, quiet food meant to last through 18-hour workdays. Most plates went cold. He rarely noticed. She noticed everything. By the second morning, coffee appeared beside his desk 5 minutes before he usually reached for it. Not asked for. Just there. The smell of actual cooking replaced cartons and wrappers. A pot simmered instead of a microwave hum. Fresh flowers sat on the table, simple white stems trimmed clean. Books shifted from display order to reading order. Chairs angled toward each other instead of away. Nothing dramatic. Nothing demanding attention. Still, the space changed. Dwayne told himself it meant efficiency. Good staff made places run better. That was all. Yet he caught himself pausing mid-call, listening. He learned the sound of her steps, light but steady. He noticed when they stopped. He left his office more often, crossing the penthouse for no reason he could name. The rooms felt used now, not just owned. The quiet pressed differently against his shoulders. On the evening of December 22nd, he returned early from work that usually kept him out past midnight. His jaw ached from holding tension too long. Snow drifted over the Chicago River, ice floating slow and heavy beneath bridges lit for Christmas. He poured bourbon and stood at the window, watching the city reflect itself back in broken light. Peggy finished what she was doing and lingered nearby, unsure if she was dismissed. He didn't send her away. "Do you believe people get second chances?" he asked, eyes still on the water. She answered without thinking too long. I believe in taking them when they show up. He turned slightly. Connection makes people weak. It gives leverage. She studied his face. It sounds lonely. His grip tightened around the glass. Loneliness is safe. Connection is liability. The words came out practiced, worn smooth from use. He had lived by them for years. She didn't argue. She stepped closer, close enough that he felt her presence without touch. Then why did you give me a second chance? The question landed harder than expected. Dwayne frowned, searching for the reason the way he searched contracts and numbers. There was nothing solid to grab. I don't know, he said. I've never not known the reason for a decision. Silence followed. Not awkward. Just full. He warned her then, voice low. He told her people who weren't afraid of him didn't survive long. He said it like a fact, not a threat. A line he expected her to step back from. Instead, she met his eyes. I am afraid, she said. Just not of you. He waited. I'm afraid of losing this chance, she continued. Of going back to being invisible. Of doing everything right and still disappearing. Something shifted in his chest. Not heat. Not desire. Recognition. You matter, he said. The words settled between them, heavy and true. As soon as he spoke them, he understood the cost. That was the problem. That was the dangerous territory. Caring changed outcomes. Caring made him hesitate. Caring had never been part of survival. She nodded once, as if she felt it too. From that night on, distance became harder to keep. They did not touch, but proximity carried meaning. Conversations lasted longer. Silence stopped feeling empty. Dwayne found himself asking questions he never asked anyone. Peggy answered honestly, without trying to impress or protect him from himself. He admitted his fear without decoration. He had built everything by never stepping back, never yielding ground. Changing course felt like tearing out part of his structure. She listened, steady. Strength isn't never backing down, she said. Sometimes it's choosing where to stand. He thought about that long after she left the room. The next morning, snow pressed thick against the windows. His phone stayed quiet longer than usual. Business slowed, forced into pause by weather. Peggy moved through the kitchen, sleeves rolled, hair pulled back. The sound of chopping and heat filled the space. He watched her without hiding it. She talked about her life before everything fell apart. About her brother. About trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. About teaching sixth graders who tested limits, because no one ever stayed long enough to enforce them. Her voice stayed even, but the weight was there. I couldn't go back, she said. Not because I failed. Because staying would have destroyed what was left. Dwayne understood that kind of choice. He had made similar ones, just with higher stakes and harder edges. I've done terrible things, he said quietly. Built everything on fear and force. She didn't soften. So do better, she replied. You already know how. They ate together that night. Really ate. Plates shared the table. Outside, the city disappeared under white. Inside, time moved differently. On Christmas morning, he handed her a small box, awkward with the act. Inside was a silver necklace, a simple chain with a small key. No explanation. She touched it like it meant something private. Her gift surprised him more. A first edition book. Not rare for value. Chosen for joy. They talked for hours. About Bridgeport. About her mother cleaning houses to buy books. About believing some things couldn't be taken if you guarded them hard enough. They took everything else, he said. But not you. She smiled. They never get that part. On the sofa, space closed naturally. He realized everyone in his life wanted something from him except her. That truth stripped him bare. When his hand found hers, he didn't pull away. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "You make me want to try." "We'll figure it out," she said. Together. In that moment, surrender didn't feel like weakness. It felt like choice. The snow started before dawn and did not stop. By mid-morning, Chicago was buried under thick white layers that softened edges and slowed the city to a crawl. Roads closed. Meetings cancelled. Dwayne's phone rang less with every passing hour until it finally went quiet. For the first time in years, there was nowhere he had to be. They were alone in the penthouse, sealed above the city. Peggy moved through the kitchen with calm focus. Pots warmed. Knives tapped the board in steady rhythm. The smell of real food filled the air, rich and grounding. Dwayne sat at his desk with his laptop open, pretending to work. He didn't read a single word. His eyes kept lifting, drawn to the ordinary scene unfolding in front of him. Someone cooking. Someone existing without fear. The normalcy unsettled him more than violence ever had. He closed the laptop. "Tell me about before," he said. She paused, then nodded. She talked about her brother first. About watching someone she loved slip away piece by piece. About empty promises and late-night phone calls that ended in silence. She told him how she drained her savings trying to pull him back, how she believed love could be enough if she tried harder. He was determined to destroy himself, she said quietly. "I just didn't want to accept it." She spoke about teaching 6th grade on the South Side. About students who tested her because they expected her to leave. About the small victories that felt like miracles. About loving the job even when it drained her. "I can't go back," she said. "Not because I failed. Because staying would mean losing myself." Dwayne listened without interrupting. He recognized the logic in her choices. Not from theory, but from lived experience. Survival sometimes meant forward motion only. Standing still could be fatal. "I've done terrible things," he said when she finished. "Built everything on fear and force. People obey me because defiance has consequences." She met his gaze, steady. "So do better," she said. "You gave me a second chance. Give yourself one." Dinner happened without ceremony. For the first time, The long dining table held plates instead of paperwork. Snow fell thick outside the windows, turning the city into a quiet painting. Dwayne watched it without calculating value or threat. "Why aren't you angry?" he asked. She considered the question. "Anger kept me warm some nights," she said. "But it burns you hollow if you keep it too long." "I got tired of being hollow." Hope filled the space instead. He absorbed that in silence. Christmas morning arrived muted and bright. Snow piled high against glass. Dwayne stood near the tree he hadn't planned to decorate, holding a small box like it might explode. Gift-giving had never been his skill. Peggy opened it carefully. Inside lay a silver necklace, simple and clean, a small key resting against the chain. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Her fingers brushed it, eyes soft. Her gift surprised him more. A first-edition book, worn but cared for. Chosen for joy, not leverage. "I thought you'd like it," she said. No reason beyond that. They spent the day talking. Real talking. About Bridgeport. About his father's hands cracked from dock work. About learning early that nothing was safe unless you guarded it hard enough. She spoke about her mother cleaning houses to buy books, believing knowledge couldn't be taken. They proved her wrong, Peggy said. But they couldn't take what the books gave her. They took everything external, Dwayne replied. But not your core. She smiled, understanding what he meant. Intelligence. Resilience. Hope. Those survived. They moved to the sofa as the day stretched on, sitting closer without deciding to. Conversation deepened, edges softening. Dwayne admitted something he had never said aloud. "Everyone wants something from me," he said. "Except you." Her hand found his, simple and sure. He didn't pull away. In that quiet, snowbound space, connection stopped feeling like threat. It felt like truth. His hand found hers without warning, fingers closing like the choice had been made long before his mind caught up. Peggy looked at him, not pulling away, not rushing him either. The city was quiet beneath snow, the penthouse wrapped in stillness that felt too honest to escape. "I'm terrified," Dwayne said. The words tasted unfamiliar. "You make me want to try. And trying has never kept me alive." She squeezed his hand. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Not perfectly. Just honestly." The kiss came slow, careful, nothing like the hunger he'd known before. It wasn't about taking. It was about staying. When he pulled her closer, the connection felt stronger than discipline, stronger than habit. For the first time, surrender felt like strength. Reality did not wait long. December 28th arrived sharp and loud. Dwayne was dressing when the call came. One of his warehouses on the south side had been firebombed. Damage contained. Message delivered. Vincent Caruso's signature was clear. Arrival pressing into territory, testing response, testing nerve. Dwayne's warmth vanished. His voice went cold. Orders moved fast. When he ended the call, Peggy was standing in the doorway, already knowing something had shifted. "You're leaving Chicago," he said. Tonight. I'll have a car take you to New York. Her expression hardened. No. This isn't a discussion, he snapped. Caruso knows about you. That makes you a target. You don't get to decide that for me, she shot back. Not out of fear. You don't understand what these people are capable of. I understand being powerless, she interrupted. I won't go back to that. The room tightened. Her defiance hit him hard, because it was the same quality that first caught his attention. She refused to be protected into silence. Refused to be placed where she couldn't choose. He wanted to lock the doors, hide her somewhere safe, make the threat disappear by force. The urge scared him. He recognized it too well. Men with power often confused control with care. He had built an empire on that mistake. If you stay, he said, voice rough, everything changes. I can't be what I've been and keep you safe. She stepped closer, eyes clear. I already know who you are. Someone capable of terrible things and beautiful things. I see all of it. The truth of that left him exposed. January arrived heavy with consequence. Dwayne responded to the attack without spectacle. No public retaliation. No bodies. He applied pressure through business routes, cut supply lines, froze accounts. Associates questioned the restraint. They expected fire, not calculation. Some whispered that he'd gone soft. He didn't correct them. At night, the fear crept in. He admitted it to Peggy in quiet moments. He had spent his life believing strength meant never backing down. Changing that belief threatened everything he'd built. I don't know if I can be both, he said one night. Who I need to be. And who you deserve. She leaned into him, steady. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to choose. The city moved forward. Snow melted into slush. Threats lingered. Love remained. What they were building wasn't safe. But it was real. And that changed everything. Peggy stood close to him in the kitchen, the room warm with late afternoon light, and the quiet hum of the city far below. She placed her hand flat against his chest. His heartbeat was fast, uneven. She felt it through his shirt. You're not becoming weak, she said calmly. You're becoming whole. Those are not the same thing. Dwayne swallowed. What if trying to change makes me vulnerable, he asked, and I lose everything? She didn't pull her hand away. Then we rebuild, she replied. But you'll still have yourself. The real you, not the armor. That has value. The word stayed with him longer than any threat ever had. Mid-January brought a challenge he could not ignore. Vincent Caruso sent word requesting a meeting at the Apex. Neutral ground. Dwayne knew what it meant. Caruso wanted to test him, to see how far the change went, to see if softness had replaced resolve. Dwayne told Peggy she should stay away. She refused. If I'm part of your life, she said, then I'm part of all of it. Including the hard parts. I won't hide while you face this alone. Logic backed her courage. Caruso already knew about her. Keeping her out changed nothing. Dwayne agreed, though every instinct pushed against it. The meeting took place in his private office. Dark wood lined the walls. Leather chairs faced each other with measured distance. The room was designed to establish dominance without words. Caruso arrived with 2 associates, relaxed and smiling. His eyes flicked to Peggy, then back to Dwayne. "So it's true," Caruso said lightly. "You've developed a conscience. Playing house. Does your strain know what you've done? How many people you've crushed to build this?" Dwayne didn't react. Peggy didn't flinch. Caruso leaned back. "I'm expanding north. You can join me. Reduced terms, of course. Or we settle things the old way." I expected fire. Instead, I find hesitation. Silence filled the room. This was the moment everyone waited for. Violence had always been the answer. It would be easy. Expected. Dwayne thought of Peggy's hand on his chest. Of the man he was choosing to become. "I won't accept either option," Dwayne said evenly. Caruso laughed. "You don't have a third." "I do," Dwayne replied. "You withdraw from the territories you've moved into. Or I hand federal investigators documents and records you believed destroyed. Enough to end your operation for decades." The smile faded. Caruso studied him closely. "You wouldn't," Caruso said. "I've changed," Dwayne answered. "I'm willing to let you walk away intact instead of destroying you completely. That's the difference. Mistake mercy for weakness, at your own risk." Caruso's jaw tightened. He understood then. This was not a bluff. The power in the room had shifted without bloodshed. Minutes later, Caruso agreed. Territory preserved. No further escalation. After they left, Peggy exhaled slowly. "That was terrifying," she said. Dwayne nodded. "And it worked." "There are ways to be strong," she replied, without tearing everything down. February brought attention Dwayne never sought. A business journalist published a piece on Chicago's development boom. His name appeared as a central figure. The article framed him as a redemption story. A former street operator, turned legitimate investor rebuilding communities once drained. Dwayne read it with dread. Visibility invited scrutiny. Scrutiny threatened everything that still remained hidden. Peggy read it differently. "This gives you cover," she said. "You've already been moving legitimate. Hotels, restaurants, properties. Now you can become what they think you are." Walking away meant abandoning millions. Power structures built over years. Control that defined his identity. "Choose the life you want," she told him, "not the one you built when power was all that mattered." Days passed in silence and thought. Leaving meant uncertainty. Associates might turn. Rivals might strike. But staying meant never escaping the constant watchfulness, the compromises that hollowed him out. On Valentine's Day, Dwayne called his key associates together. He announced his exit from underground operations. He sold interests at fair value. He committed fully to legitimate business. Reactions ranged from disbelief to anger. A few offered quiet respect. That night, standing with Peggy overlooking the frozen lake, he admitted the truth. "I'm afraid I'm losing myself." She took his face in her hands and made him look at her. "You're not losing anything," she said. "You're finding yourself. The man who gives second chances. The man who chooses strategy over destruction." "And if I'm not enough without it?" he asked. "You've been enough since the moment you saw someone who needed help and chose to give it without benefit," she said. "You've been enough every time you chose us over the easy path." The fear didn't vanish, but it loosened its grip. February arrived with sunlight bouncing off icy streets, but it wasn't warmth that occupied Dwayne's mind. A business journalist had published a detailed profile connecting his name to Chicago's development boom. The story painted him as a redemption narrative, a former street operator turned legitimate investor, breathing new life into neighborhoods he once exploited. Hotels, restaurants, property renovations, the list went on. For the public, he appeared a visionary who had turned away from shadows. For him, every word threatened exposure. Reading it, terror coiled in his chest. The surface story was safe because people didn't look too closely, didn't dig into ownership structures, past contracts, or the connections that still hummed beneath legitimate fronts. The article made him seem weak, soft, almost ordinary. That appearance invited investigation. A small mistake, a curious journalist, a lingering enemy could undo months of careful effort. Peggy, observing from across the penthouse, offered a different perspective. "This is exactly what you've been building toward," she said. "You've already moved legitimate. Hotels, restaurants, property developments. This article just gives cover for reality. You can be exactly what they're describing, fully, publicly." Dwayne paced. "Millions in revenue, decades of influence, a power structure I've spent years cementing, walk away from it all. Risk losing everything built, for something uncertain." She stepped closer, fingers brushing his arm. "Choose the life you want," she said firmly, "instead of the one you built when power meant everything. When control was all that mattered." Days passed in consumed reflection. Each morning he reviewed records, projections, spreadsheets, weighing numbers against the unknown. The old life had clarity. Command was simple. Fear was a currency he understood. Choosing legitimacy meant relinquishing control. It meant trusting that strategy, influence, and respect could exist without force. Accepting uncertainty had never been his skill, yet it loomed. Associates questioned his direction, some outright suggesting betrayal. Rivals sensed opportunity, sending coded warnings and testing loyalties. Friends within his circle hesitated. Dwayne felt the old world tug at his mind, whispering that power was absolute, compromise dangerous. But possibility glimmered in the quiet moments with Peggy. Freedom from constant vigilance. Freedom from moral compromises that had hollowed him. Freedom from isolation that had defined his life before her. He could finally act, lead, and exist without being trapped behind walls of fear and dominance. Valentine's Day arrived crisp and clear. Dwayne convened a meeting with key associates. His presence filled the room with authority, but his words shocked. He announced the transition out of underground operations entirely. Interests sold at fair value. Focus shifted exclusively to legitimate business ventures. Reactions spanned the spectrum. Some stared in disbelief. Others whispered anger and betrayal. A few nodded with respect, appreciating the audacity required to walk away from power they themselves would cling to. Dwayne ignored them all, focusing on the certainty he had found in Peggy's presence. After the meeting, he returned to the penthouse. The city stretched frozen beneath them, Lake Michigan a vast sheet of white and glass. He stood near the window, shoulders tense. "I'm afraid," he admitted quietly, voice nearly lost in the wind. "I'm afraid I'm losing myself by walking away from it all." Peggy came close, hands taking his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You're not losing," she said firmly. "You're finding yourself. The man who gives second chances. The man who chooses strategy over violence. The man who chooses us over fear. That is the real you." He let the words sink. Then, almost in a whisper, he asked what he had feared most. "And if I'm not enough without it?" Her smile was steady, certain. "You've been enough since the moment you saw someone who needed help and chose to provide it, even when it served no strategic purpose. You've been enough every time you chose us over the easy path." He closed his eyes, drawing a slow breath. For the first time in years, power didn't feel like weight. It felt like possibility. Spring arrived, melting snow into streams along the streets of Chicago. The city was awake and bustling, but inside the penthouse, life had changed in ways neither Dwayne nor Peggy could have predicted months before. The morning light hit scattered books on the coffee table, photographs lining the shelves, and evidence of a life actually lived, not just displayed. The apartment breathed. It wasn't just wealth on show anymore, it was home. Dwayne's business thrived in a way different from the past. The strategic brilliance he had once applied to illegal operations now guided legitimate investments, hotels, restaurants, property development, all without the constant threats, compromises, and moral calculations that had once defined him. Deals moved smoothly, respect came without fear, and satisfaction lingered in accomplishments untainted by coercion or violence. Peggy's growth mirrored his own. Enrolled in graduate school for educational administration, she poured herself into programs serving at-risk youth, using her experience with loss and recovery to guide decisions and mentor others. She found purpose beyond survival, channeling empathy into action. Together, they built a life that was quieter, more authentic. It wasn't a fairy tale wedding or grand foundation programs. It was the choice to see each other daily, to build a partnership grounded in mutual respect and trust. Evenings were spent in the penthouse now truly lived in. Books lay open on the sofas, chairs slightly askew from conversations, photographs from family trips or friends' gatherings filled the shelves. The space vibrated with the energy of real life, not just polished surfaces. Hosting dinners became normal. Dwayne's associates mingled with Peggy's graduate school friends. Conversations weren't calculated. Laughter wasn't strategic. Circles of influence now existed as relationships built on knowledge of character, not as transactional tools. They used their combined strengths to effect change. Dwayne's business acumen supported the educational initiatives Peggy developed, funding scholarships, building learning spaces, and creating opportunities for youth who otherwise might have fallen through the cracks. The work wasn't flashy, the impact was quiet but tangible. Success was measured in progress, in young faces brightening at their first books, in schools furnished with supplies they otherwise would not have. A year after their first encounter in the hotel basement, they returned together as a private joke, but also as a sacred ritual, to the very laundry facility where their worlds collided. Peggy laughed softly, remembering the anger she felt that day. "I was so angry," she said, "at the unfairness, at needing help, at being invisible." Dwayne's gaze lingered on her. "You were never invisible," he said. "You were the first real thing I'd seen in years." The utilitarian room, stripped of luxury, stark and practical, felt different now. They were different now. Standing there, he recognized how far they had come, how much growth had been achieved not in grand gestures, but in persistent choices. They knew transformation wasn't complete. The past still echoed, and navigating his history alongside her background required constant awareness. Challenges arose in finances, decisions, and the ripple effects of their former lives. Yet each difficulty became a chance to reaffirm commitment, to choose understanding over assumption, dialogue over dominance. Change was continuous work. The choice to continue together was deliberate. Not perfect. Not easy. But deliberate. Every day, they showed up. Every day, they communicated honestly. Every day, they chose each other, reaffirming that the life they were building was theirs, not dictated by fear, control, or circumstance, but by intention and shared values. Evening settled over the penthouse, soft light spilling across the kitchen where Peggy stirred a pot, and Dwayne leaned against the counter, half listening, half thinking about everything that had brought them here. The apartment felt alive, filled with the evidence of shared days, small choices, and the quiet work of building something real. Dwayne realized the truth he had been avoiding. Real power didn't come from fear or dominance. It came from choice, choosing vulnerability, choosing to change course even when risk was high, choosing to trust someone fully despite past losses. The most powerful act he had performed in years wasn't constructing an empire, but dismantling the parts of himself that had been built on force and fear to make room for something meaningful. That realization extended beyond business. It applied to relationships, to life itself. Both he and Peggy had learned the value of connection through risk. They had experienced loss so deep it had taught them to build walls, to protect themselves through distance. Their relationship was only possible because each chose to risk connection anyway, to allow themselves to be fully seen, and more importantly, chosen in return. Their second chances were earned. The first offer was transactional, a decision made from strategy. Transformation came when Dwayne genuinely chose to change, when Peggy refused to accept a passive role, insisting on being an equal partner. Both committed to growth, shaping their lives together rather than following paths predetermined by fear or circumstance. Their histories might have dictated certain outcomes, yet together they rewrote the story. Dwayne's past did not have to define his future, and neither did Peggy's. Courage, trust, and support allowed them to forge a life aligned with who they wanted to be, not who they had been. Love revealed itself through daily choices rather than dramatic declarations. Each morning spent listening, each evening spent understanding, each small action building connection. This was sustainable, true love. Choosing to see each other fully, consistently, became the foundation for everything else. Redemption remained complex. Dwayne didn't pretend the past vanished. Walking away from previous power required negotiation, strategy, and living with uncertainty. Redemption was not magic. It was choosing differently, acknowledging harm done, and moving forward with intention. Control, long his instinct, became something he surrendered willingly in their relationship. Success had always demanded total command. Love required letting go. Accepting that life's most meaningful things could not be managed or predicted freed them both. That evening, they cooked together, exchanging conversation about graduate school, business strategy, and dreams for the community. The easy rhythm of partnership was comforting. Their home reflected life, not luxury alone. Peggy's educational programs were launching in neighborhoods once affected by Dwayne's operations, and his legitimate developments now included affordable housing components. Their story became a force for positive change. Love had not fixed everything. There were challenges, complexities, and hard decisions still ahead. But love had provided reasons to do the difficult work of fixing themselves, of building a life intentionally and with care. Standing together at the window, looking over Chicago where their journey had begun, the city stretched before them uncertain, but full of possibility. They had chosen it together. Dwayne understood the ultimate truth. The only power worth having was the power to choose differently. Peggy had learned that losing everything could create space for rebuilding something better. Together, they discovered love, not convenient, not predictable, not always safe, but the most transformative force they had ever known. Their story did not end with perfect resolution. It continued as a committed choice, the ongoing work of showing up, being honest, and choosing each other despite uncertainty. This romance wasn't a fantasy of effortless love. It was truth, that love gives reason to do the hard work, and that choosing it, messy, complicated, vulnerable, is perhaps the bravest act of all. The city lights twinkled far below. They stood side by side, hands intertwined, knowing the story they shared was their own, a story of transformation, of risk, of connection, and of a love that could not be controlled, only chosen. This was the power of choice. This was the reward of trust. This was the transformation that neither had anticipated, but both had fought to create. Their journey would continue. And they would continue it together. Thank you, truly, thank you for spending these moments with me. Every time you watch, every time you listen, every time you allow these characters to touch your heart, you give life to this channel. Your support is the reason these stories continue to breathe. We're on a journey together, one built on love, heartbreak, healing, and resilience. And now, we're reaching for a new milestone, 10,000 subscribers. It's a big dream, but it's a dream we can reach together. If you've been enjoying these stories, if you've ever felt seen, moved, comforted, or inspired by them, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's a message that these stories matter, that this little storytelling family is growing, and that we're building something beautiful here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. And thank you for being part of this journey. Let's reach 10,000 side by side.